22nd for his next hearing.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. She was out there right quick. Monday morning. JVZ. Peace, good morning. Depina. Juan, Terrence, Linda, Charlene. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. What's happening? Damon, Jax. Peace. All right, so before I get into the BPD thing, because I talked about other scandals in general, I just want to touch on something else first this morning. And as this stuff comes out, when I'm working, I constantly CNN on, and so we got the R. Kelly, we got the Jussie Smollett, the Bob Crap. There's a lot of stories, that's swirling around, and sometimes, in times like this when there's a lot of stuff, it can be information overload. But me, as a person who does a lot of analysis and looks at a lot of this stuff, I want to just reiterate to people who may not know what my position is on these types of things, particularly when it's people that I quote unquote know or people who are locally. So the other day I posted something about Conan Harris, right? And I want folks to understand, right? I don't have nothing against him personally, and I got a lot of love for his wife. What happens is that when these things, like, you become in the public sphere, and these things are out, we could pretend we don't see it. I mean, it's in the newspapers. I read the newspapers, every day. And when I see something like that, I'm pointing it out to you. See, I think a lot of people mistook it. Because when I put it out, first of all, I said, pay attention. The attacks are beginning. Right? So when people be like, oh, so what? Like, so what, he didn't pay his taxes? So what about... That wasn't the point I was raising. That's the point that the media raised, henceforth their article. Do I give it... If it was up to me, none of us would be paying taxes. You know what I mean? Please. What do I care? My point is this. My point is that now, when these things pop up, we have to look at the attack. And this is, in my guess, the first of many. I'm surprised that didn't come up during the election. This is what I'm talking about. Talking about the tools that are used against us and being aware of it. So I'm not taking any pleasure or laughing at that man or looking at the downfall of that man. I'm looking at it as an example and an analysis of what happens to us in the media, what happens in real life and whatnot. And also, too, how these things are coming, because she is super important and critical. And if you think becoming the first black woman out of, Massachusetts to be a congressperson, and, going to Washington, D.C., and, you're talking about shaking up the powers that be, and, you're talking about bringing accountability and whatnot to the establishment, and you're talking about Donald Trump and whatnot. I mean, we know they're coming, right? And they're going to dig up dirt, and this is what they do. So that is part, for me, why I pointed it out, because here it is, and it's beginning. She just got inaugurated. What was that? Sworn in or whatever. What was that, like January, right after the new year, right? So that didn't take him long. I'm actually surprised it took him this long, right? Because I'm surprised that it didn't come out during the campaign. But also, too, on my page, what happens here is a couple of things that I also want to deal with, which is just also facts. So I'm so particular on facts. Now, if somebody says, yo, did you see so-and-so on the cover in that red suit, but they really had on a blue suit, I'm the person to be like, hey, just by the way, it was a blue suit. All right, because I think all of that stuff is important if we're going to talk about stuff. So there was a couple of points that came up on my page that I thought it was important for me to clarify. It was on my page, and it was not my original intent. One was the whole thing about him being a political consultant. Not the best move to me. It opens up too many questions about impropriety and influence peddling. I think that's a bad move. But, you know, it's out there and whatnot. People have brought up their own concerns and whatnot. Obviously, this is a new thing. But somebody there who was in defense of him was saying that people who are independent contractors, you know, this happens all the time, taxes, little discrepancies and whatnot. And I just wanted to be clear that, you know, this is a new thing. So all that they were talking about, that was under city employment, which now becomes, you know, that's why they went after it. Let me just say that. And they listed the years, and it's not recent taxes. This is a thing before. And then also too, somebody was like, well, he paid it all back in the same day. No. And once again, why is this important? Do I care? No. Media analysis though. Y'all got to read the articles. All right. I read the articles. Another great example of that right now with the Jussie Smollett thing. Everybody talking about the check. Or now it is proof he wasn't lying. Right. Y'all. So he wrote a check for training and video ad. We already knew they were trainers and whatnot. When you write a check, like if you're gonna buy a kilo of cocaine and you're gonna write a check, you're gonna put in the memo kilo of cocaine. You're gonna, you know what I mean? I mean, do people think? Okay, the brothers who already testified, and you know, could it all be lying? Sure, but I'm just going based on what was said, right? Based on what is said, the brothers said he paid us for this. And it was like more than we expected. Kind of wink, wink, nod, nod. Nah, he didn't pay us for the attack like that, but we knew what else it was for. I don't know if any of y'all have ever done a little dirty deal or something, but sometimes, you know, less is more. You know what I mean? And you don't got to spell it out and write it down and all this type of stuff. But in any event, I digress. I'm just talking about that when a story comes out, our ability to read it thoroughly, because a lot of times what I find on my page, other pages, is we start arguing points that are not in fact part of, you know, the information that we're dealing with. All right, we either getting it wrong, we exaggerating it, we just twisting it, and it becomes clear that like a lot of times too, what we do is we comment and we ain't even reading the whole article, right? Okay. All right, so now on to the Boston police thing. All right, hopefully I clarified a little bit on that because I don't want to go in too much. So now let's do the Boston police thing. Dealing with the Boston Police Department is very dangerous and very tricky. You have to really be on your game. Like sometimes, you know, they can afford to make mistakes. They can afford to be wrong, but we can't, right? And by that, what I've learned over the years, and I believe I've, you know, always practiced, I think I'm just getting better, is finding out what's popping, right, before you make it hot. I'll give you an example. Right now, people are trying to get information on the shooting. Because some people are screaming about it, it makes those people who are really trying to get the information, it makes it more difficult for them because basically the police and everybody else just clamps down on the information as people are, you know, and I'm not saying to ask for information, but oftentimes it's, you know, how you do it or what so have you. So let's do an example, and I hope maybe he's on here or he may tune in. But like right now, Christian White has been doing some videos and calling for people to call in to Dan Mulhern, to the DA's office, Dan Mulhern, and demand a fair investigation. Let's examine that as a strategy. I just want to examine that as a strategy. And he and I haven't had a chance to talk yet. We've been going, you know, back and forth on the chat and all that. But these things are important, and it's coming up because, you know, people have been asking me about it. So one, as a strategy, Number one, if we're gonna do that, the number that we give out 617-619-4000. That's the main line to the district attorney's office. So one suggestion, just to not be a pain in everybody's behind and blow up the spot, because that's I'll get to that part. So just to be direct, I think we should try to get Dan Mulhern's direct extension, if in fact we feel as though Dan Mulhern is the one to be called. I saw back and forth on there where Carlos has said he had called Rachel. In general, I'm going to go with that only because, she's the one that holds the office. And none of these calls, what are these people going to pick up the phone? No, they're busy. You're going to be leaving a message. I am not even sure that is the best strategy to employ for a couple of reasons. One, when you call an entity like that, and you're encouraging other people to call, one, if you don't provide a script, what are these people calling to say? Because, different people got different attitudes, right? So I might call up and say, hello, good morning. I'm calling just to like to ensure that there's a fair and impartial investigation. Somebody else might say, hey, I'm calling about a fair and impartial investigation. So it ain't always good to just have random people call. What I have found is useful is collecting signatures, collecting names. I've also found that writing a letter or an email or what have you is often more effective and all that. But beforehand, before all that happens, before we try to mobilize and get action, like I say all the time, we need to know what we're doing. And so a question that I ask people a lot, now this is not to do with Christian Wright anymore, this is off of that post, this is just in general. Oftentimes y'all have seen me as, activists and whatnot, I'm going to say popped up here and there. And, they jump on an issue. And my whole thing is like, okay, so, how you got like a level of expertise, you go to a dentist, some of y'all might do the tough thing and you got dental students or what have you, and, zada-da-da. But, most people, they want the professional, the proficient in that area. A doctor, a lawyer, a carpenter. I know a little bit of carpentry, but you don't want me to build your whole house, things like that you want to, I think, weigh out. And because these things are so serious, I think that we need to do a lot more planning. I think that as a community, we do a lot of knee-jerk reactions. We have a lot of people who are talking on subjects that I don't know, once again, I don't know what they know, right? So I'm not going to say they don't know nothing. I'm just saying that if many of these people were experts in the fields that they are dealing with, we kind of would have knew by now, right? I'm not a ball player, but like I knew who was nice when I was coming up because it was evident they were nice, right? And on and on and on. You knew who the smart kid was in school. You knew who the best rapper was. You know what I mean? Zada-da-da-da-da-da. Their reputation kind of preceded them. So I think that what has happened as of late is, and this is generally, culturally, nationally, all that, the dumbing down of America, if you will, just generally what we're caught in. And we have the most vocal generation of people in the forefront or putting themselves in the forefront who I'm gonna say know very little about the things they're talking about. So for instance, this happened to me in policing a lot. Policing, let's say I've been doing policing for a long time. Occupy came. Occupy was like, you don't know nothing about policing. Occupy the police. And they ended up really setting a lot of the things that was in motion back, because now you had to kind of sift through a lot of this, what I'm saying is crazy stuff. And some stuff happened, but people like me then who said, this ain't gonna last, them people ain't gonna be nowhere. It fizzled out, and that's what happened. And now, you know, it's back to just me and the same few other people who was doing it beforehand anyway. So there's like all these distractions, these flashes in the pan, when everybody cares. Then there was another time, like around the first advent of Black Lives Matter. Then the ACLU got involved, and if y'all remember it's like the Coalition for Police Accountability or something, and you know, I tried to, I don't know, warn people, if that's the right term or whatever, but in any event, so that went by the wayside too. And Black Lives Matter is a shadow of its former self. And once again, too, sometimes you get these movements and people are excited and they're energetic and they have all the rhetoric and all the energy and that, yeah, but they don't got the substance behind it. So it ends up being a fleeting thing, or they fizzle out, or they just end up shouting it, you know, to the moon. And, you know, if you think about a lot of these protests or these rallies or whatever, these meetings, what ended up coming out of it, right? Was there a policy push? No, they were never heavy on policy to begin with. It was a lot of just, you know, I don't want to diminish it too much, but it was a lot of anger directed, with a lot of identifying and screaming about the problems, and it was not really heavy on proposals, solutions, none of that. So in any event, it wasn't the most helpful. I find like we're about to go back into a cycle, or we've already been in a cycle of that, but I find like we're about to even slip deeper, let me say that, into that cycle, right? So that I think now is the time to fall back. And like, for instance, we talking a lot about the stories now with what has happened with this most recent Boston police shooting. Every time there's a Boston police shooting, the fact that we have to scramble, all I hear is that sound that's in the cartoons, like when they're running. Like every time there's a police shooting, where everybody's scrambling, frantic, rather than sitting down, creating a framework, a protocol that then works each time this arises. So then we're not shooting from the hip every time this happens and working in silos, but we have the ability to call together our best minds, right, related to this thing based on expertise and whatnot, right, to come up with some very basic questions that would be in place in the case of every officer involved shooting. And then these things could also, you know, have offshoots in terms of, you know, whether the victim had a weapon or did not have a weapon. And see, so that's a divergent branch right there. Because the outcomes for somebody who was unarmed, did not have a weapon, and somebody who did have a weapon is very different. So for instance, in this case here, I've worked on a lot of these type of cases here in Boston and across the country, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because it's never a pleasure to deal with these cases. It's a lot of loss. It's a lot of pain. You're dealing with people's families. And most often there is there's no win, you know. That person certainly ain't coming back for that family, right? And generally there's no win on the other end. So obviously, a case that involves someone who actually has a gun opens up a whole new box of complications when you're dealing with an officer-involved shooting. Because in their world, that automatically justifies it, all right? So now the question is, did you have a weapon? Okay. Was the weapon just like on you or near you? Was it in you? Did you use it? Were you holding it? Were you aiming it? Were you shooting it? Or was it just there in the car? And in this case, what they're saying is that they pulled him over for a stop. And as the officer approached, he began shooting. Now, that's what they say. Now, here's where we get to another divergent path. The officer's version of events. Are we to just trust that? Absolutely not. Right? But we take that. We have to take that into account. At least there's the statement of the officer who did the shooting. There should be the statement of the partner officer. We should be looking for any video that may be in the area. Video generally comes from several sources, either city sources, meaning, it's one of the city cameras, business, commercial sources, it's the local variety store's camera or whatever, residential sources, your neighbor's security cam or the little Ring doorbell or something like that, or the cop sources, if there's a body camera or any other type of thing. Now that we have body cameras, right? But in this case, there's no body cameras. In this case, we haven't heard of any other footage. Here's where these cases get difficult. If there is any other footage, how would you know? See, this is when we talk about when we're calling for a fair, thorough investigation, an independent investigation. We are only dependent on the information that they give us. And I can tell you, based on experience, if folks continue to go off and, I think, shoot from the hip, less information will come out, not more. So I think that the proper way to handle it is to, yes, request a fair and thorough investigation. We want to see the information, but here's also another thing too. Sometimes when the community demands information in an investigation, it's like, unless, like, who are you? Like, we can't just put it up on Facebook for everybody to see. That's not how that's going to happen. It never has happened like that. So, out of respect to people's family members and da-da-da-da, sometimes we make calls, we make demands that might not even be realistic, right? And sometimes the way that we might make those demands might not be helpful or conducive to the end result. Almost think about manners. Excuse me, can I have a piece of bread? Hey, man, give me a piece of bread. Which one works better? So, little things like that, in my experience. This is why, with my brand of activism, I have always strove to be direct, intense, fierce, and all that, but also polite and not engage in anything that is close to conflict other than the conflict that we have because of the situation we're dealing with, right? Other than that, I found it's hurt, right? So for me, in the past, working with a lot of these families and whatnot, I think we have to be very careful because most often information gets buried. If there are cameras, oftentimes the tapes wind up missing or, damaged. We can't see anything, it didn't record that. It was pointing this way. There's 101 excuses. Then also, too, there have been times in the past where we believe that there's been footage and they've just never, not like, the footage was missing. They just said that there was never any footage to begin with. So how do you even combat that, right? The worst case ever to deal with is a case where the person himself is supposed to have a weapon. So many questions come up. Obviously, does the weapon have that person's fingerprints on them? Do we know that it was in fact their weapon? How do we know it was not planted by the police? If they are saying that there were shots fired, was that weapon fired? Is there residue on the hands and the clothing of the vehicle? Was the vehicle tested for ballistic too? Because if you're shooting out of a window, so there's a lot of questions to come up. And I think that what we need to do and what we would be better served by is putting all this together in a concrete way. For those folks, who are interested in this type of thing, please reach out. I know I've reached out to Christian and hopefully we get to build on this at some point today. But I think that there's a collective way that we could do this to see the results that we want. And primarily, not only via the office of Rachel Rollins, but also, too, let's not forget, this is also a new day, quote unquote, for Commissioner Gross. This is the first officer-involved shooting while we have our first black commissioner who's talking about transparency and accountability and doing things different. So I'd also like to see what's happening on the BPD side of the investigation, because a lot of people should know that the BPD also investigates this internally. It's not just the DA's office who investigate. Anytime an officer discharges their weapon, there's an investigation. So the story as we have it now is that this guy was pulled over, shot at the officer, hit the officer several times, and that his partner then returned fire and shot multiple times. I've heard 17, 18 times. Once again, I've seen no official reports, nor do I expect to see anything publicly anytime soon. Anything that's, very deep. And anything that I may see privately, I would not be able to share publicly, right? So there have been times when the police or the DA's office might make a video, if there's video available, or might pull in a group of people to either watch a video or for them to provide, everything that they can on an investigation up to that case. So, as always, y'all, I'm staying on message. My hope is that cooler heads prevail, that we use research and study to form our best defense and offense, in our quest for justice, right? And this does not mean let them off the hook. This does not mean go soft on them. No, if y'all hear me saying that, then you're not understanding what I'm saying. What I'm saying is go at them precisely. You know what I mean? I don't want to, if it was a fight, I don't want to do all this. I want to do that. Right? Okay? We have to think about basically black excellence, executing our strategy to the best way, using the most research and study we have to plan it out and plot it out so that we get the desired results and outcomes that we can. That is hopefully that's the goal. That's always my goal. Tangible results. So y'all, let's stay posted. Oh yeah, the number of shots is excessive. Certainly. And once again, I don't know how we're going to get it out. It'll be interesting to find out if this person shot, how did they shoot? Was it a shot and then a cop shooting back and then another shot and then another shot and the shot, or was it the person shot all of them out first, boom, 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 and then the cop just unloaded, da 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 da. Was it return fire, or was it just one-way fire and then that way, or was it back and forth? Right. So these are a lot of the type of questions with the ballistic evidence, and an officer at that time of night, whatever. I'm gonna assume that adrenaline is pumping, and and they emptied their clip. But yeah, we don't know much yet. We hope to find out more. And once again, let's just put our best foot forward so that we can get the desired results that we want, which is justice, right? And we want police reform, right? We want a civilian review board. We want an independent body to review all these things. And don't get fooled, y'all. Don't think that somebody just started this 5 minutes ago. We've been on this, right? We've been on this, pushing for this for years. So the more the merrier. Get on board to the fight. A lot of this is already taking place in City Hall. We need to pressure the city council, the mayor, right, for a civilian review board, right, in the state house. We need to advocate for police decertification, right? All of this type of stuff this work is done. It's under a big umbrella of policing and police reform and criminal justice reform. And if y'all want to get involved, please contact me. All right? All right. Let me get out of here. Y'all have a good day. All right? Have a great day. Go do something great today. Be great today. All right? Tell somebody you love them. Better yet, show somebody some love. Show some love to a youth or an elder. All right? And push through the pain to the power, y'all. All right. Peace.